Yes. That is amazing.
I was told I was supposed to be wearing a mask during coronavirus, so
Right? Yeah. So
here we go. I have my mask on. But I don't actually think it's conducive to interviewing.
might stifle the voice a little bit. I'm here for the discussion here on the creature of the Black Lagoon and how its original designer of the entire look of the outfit, she ended up getting robbed of the credit that she 100% deserved. But I am here with somebody who knows a lot more about this than me. So if you could do us a favor, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Christina Gaddy. I'm a writer, and I think it was back in it was 2017. I got a little fascinated with the story of Milicent Patrick and the creature from the Black Lagoon, and started digging into it. Just because, not at that point, not a lot of people had written about it or knew anything about how she had been, robbed of the designation as the creator of the creature.
The creature of the Black Lagoon has, a lot going for it in terms of, being a historical monster movie and everything. It was one of the first things to really incorporate a lot of like water, cameras and action scenes there and everything. But I would say the one thing that people most hold on to is the look of the creature. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that's so interesting about the story is that monster is so iconic. And there's a new HBO documentary series out last night about Michelle McNamara, and they include scenes from Creature from the Black Lagoon kind of as an allegory to the story there. And so it's like literally everywhere this monster pops up as, super iconic, very iconic of the Universal monsters, very iconic of monster movies from that era in general. And then at the same time, and I think this is an interesting thing is today we get like credits and credits and credits, and everybody who's worked on the movie gets listed. And back then it was like, okay, here's the makeup person. They're the one who gets the credit. Maybe somebody else gets a little bit of credit, but all of these makeup departments, those people aren't listed. And so, even just with that, you don't get her name on screen. And then on top of that, just this controversy with Bud Westmore and not being able to kind of fully take credit for what she had done and what she had created.
And we just mentioned her name a second ago, but could you tell us, who did invent the look of the creature from the Black Lagoon?
Yeah, so she went by Milicent Patrick, and she had a lot of names in her life. She was born Mildred Rossi, and then at various points went by Mildred Fitzpatrick and Milicent Fitzpatrick, and then finally Milicent Patrick. And so she was kind of in the Hollywood vein, creating a name for herself, quite literally.
Now, when the film was kind of wrapped, she went around promoting the film and could quite freely say, "Yeah, I created this character," but that ended up causing a stir. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so it's a little. I think she was definitely trying to play nice. So she did the sketches for the monster. And then other people in the art department created the models, and there was a whole thing about, is the monster scary enough? They had originally created a version that the writer Alan thought was, he like wanted it to be very sad and sympathetic, that okay, we have a monster who wants to love this woman and he doesn't get to. And the kind of response from the studio was, that's not scary enough, we need something scarier. So they came up with what ended up being Gill-Man. And they had originally said, the studio was saying, okay, we're gonna promote it as the woman who created the beast, and that's gonna be the kind of promo tour. If you look up photos of Milicent Patrick, she was very attractive. She had even acted in some films. So she was a very glamorous person to be kind of putting out there as a spokesperson for the movie, as the promotional kind of model, if you will. And then even Bud got even like a little bit of a hint of that, and he said, he was like stirring up a little bit of a fuss. And so then the studio said, okay, we're going to change it so that it's not the woman, you know, who created the monsters, but she lives with them. And so they were going to take these promotional shots where she has her monster masks, and it was, you know, to downplay that a little bit. And the studio was clearly kind of just ticked off that Bud was putting up such a fit. And so there are all these memos that go back and forth where he's complaining, and the studio's like, all right, well, we just have to appease him. So we're going to say, you know, he's the head of makeup at Universal. We're just going to say that she's the one that lives with these monsters instead, and kind of downplay the credit. And by all accounts, she was kind of playing nice and not saying like, oh no, he didn't create it. Like, she was going along with the narrative that they wanted. But that was clearly still not enough. And Bud got, you know, freaked out, and she was doing great on tour. People loved her. She was on the Today Show and like interviewed in all of these newspapers. And then Bud Westmore would like ask for those newspapers to be sent from Michigan and the East Coast to California so that he could read what she was saying, absolutely terrified that she was going to, you know, spill the beans that she had, you know, done more work on it than anybody was giving her credit for. But she never really, I mean, she never came out and said, oh, I did that. It was just the fact that she was doing such a great job on the promotional tour, and clearly people were really connecting with her.
And who is Bud other than a man who has like the emotional ego of a toddler?
Yeah, so he was the head of makeup, and by many accounts, he was not the head of makeup at Universal, and by many accounts, he was not actually good at monster makeup. People said he was very good at making, you know, kind of women classically pretty in the 1950s era, and creating, you know, makeup looks for a whole movie. But, you know, like even his brother was like, he couldn't kind of be credited with having created such an interesting monster. And, you know, other people who worked on the monster as well, Chris Mueller, I think, was the sculptor, you know, they were all just like, yeah, no, he would kind of come in and sign off on things or say what he liked or what he didn't like, but he wasn't the one who was, you know, actively working on it, which is completely contrary to what he said. He said, oh no, I was the one sketching it, and everybody gave up because it was so hard, you know, to get this right. But then at the same time, having that like controversial, like both I did all of this work, it was me. And then at the same time saying, you know, but he wasn't actually that scary. He wasn't scary enough. I thought he could have been scarier, like publicly saying that. So he was taking the credit and then also denigrating himself.
Well, at one point, didn't he say that, like, yeah, she sketched it, but it was all from my brain. So, you know, like something like how does that work?
Yes, exactly. It was basically like, oh, I did some rough sketches and then she fleshed them out. And so any sketches that you see that she did, they're really my sketches, and I'm the mastermind behind this. And he very much wanted to be, you know, that mastermind. It seems less and less of a fanciful story that somebody just like, oh, we don't exactly know who did it. It's like, no, all signs point to he was a jerk, and the idea that he would, you know, steal credit for something is not at all unusual or unheard of.
In 1952, when the movie comes out, like, you know, there's in the credits, her name is nowhere to be seen. And, you know, is there any information on, you know, how she feels about this, that like it's just been kind of, the rug's been taken out from under her and all the credit that she rightfully deserves has been just completely taken out?
I think she, you know, mainly tried to move on. A lot of the sourcing for the memos that I got was through Tom Weaver, who's written a lot of books about Universal monster movies. And he had, you know, transcribed these and sent them to me. And you know, I kind of asked it. He's like, well, I don't want to speculate because I don't, know anything about this. I haven't talked to anybody. By the time that people started to kind of get interested in the story and even in kind of monster movie history, she died in 1998. So nobody ever got a chance to come and interview her or ask her like what exactly she thought about it. But Tom kind of thinks she must have soured on the whole experience, or it made it, unpleasant for her to work in Hollywood, because she was clearly frozen out by Bud, and she could have gotten a job somewhere else, and continued working, but she didn't.
Obviously, to get a little more on the deep side here, Bud sounds like the kind of guy who doesn't want anybody having credit when he could steal it away. But I mean, how much of it was that he was upset that she was a successful female artist, and how much of that like attacked his like fragile masculinity?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that must have played a part in it because there were other men who worked on the kind of the overall design of the costume, if you will, the sculpting, and actually, putting it together from a drawing, from a design into, the actual physical object. And, these memos, these things don't show anything that that they were somehow, said to not have done any of the work on it. And there's even receipts about people getting paid overtime to work on it and to come up with the costume. So there's clearly other people involved, and none of them got the kind of crazy backlash that she got. Is that because of the public element of it? Is that because she was a woman? But then I think you can't also take away the public element from the fact that she was a woman and an attractive woman. Because if she hadn't been, they probably wouldn't have thought, oh, let's put her on tour, as the representative.
Assuming I don't have the exact numbers, but it had to be extremely rare in the 1950s for a woman to be working in the Hollywood system, other than, and this may surprise people, editing, because back in the day, men thought that was women's work because it's similar to like, knitting or something along those lines. But so outside of like editing, it was probably uncommon for a woman to have such a prestige position in the system.
Yeah, definitely. And she claimed she was also very good at talking herself up. So I think she definitely, I don't know if she actually had an ego or just like needed to say nice things about herself to kind of increase her, self-esteem. But she said she was one of the first animators at Disney. And it was similar there, where the coloring was done by women because that was quote unquote women's work, but the actual animation was men's work, and that she got a job actually as an animator. She probably wasn't, she wasn't the first female animator, but she did work as an animator, which is, a talent in itself, an accomplishment in itself. But yeah, so she was definitely in a position of being surrounded by male colleagues. And yeah, when you're looking at all of the other names of people who were interviewed later about what actually happened with this, can we kind of suss anything out? Or people telling their stories about working on that production, they're all men. And we obviously have, a female lead, but very male heavy productions, even among, with actors at that time as well.
She works on one other film and then just basically leaves the business. And you had mentioned, that the system had kind of soured her on wanting to be a part of it. But was there also kind of an understanding that, like, the powers that be, i.e. the men at the top, are going to say, or, could have sabotaged her as well? Like, oh, don't hire her. She's a nasty woman. You won't want to deal with her. She's difficult.
I mean, there's definitely the possibility of that, because the other thing is that the Westmores ran basically all of the makeup studios in Hollywood. And so, Bud Bud was at one, and then he had 4 brothers, and they were at other studios, and they didn't always get along. But you know, I can definitely imagine a situation where she's like, okay, well, I can't work on this production anymore, and I'm gonna go try to find another job, and you know, gets rejected from that, or just realizes that's what they're gonna say about me, and if I'm not able to keep my job here, why is, you know, somebody else gonna hire me?
Obviously, it would have been nice from the outset if she had gotten the credit she deserved, because maybe more women would have gone into that particular type of, you know, field and film and everything. But I think now with the story of her coming out, maybe it will be, you know, two-sided. Like young girls will realize, okay, I can do that because she did, but I'm also gotta, you know, push even harder because of the patriarchy at the top. I got to work twice as hard, and like, but I, you know, I can do it. So it's kind of almost a warning sign, but also you can do it. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully it definitely is an inspiration, that, you know, especially monster movies, things that, you know, one perhaps thinks of as traditionally in a male realm, that, you know, doesn't prohibit anybody else from doing it. And then, yeah, but also, like you said, the warning sign of, okay, this, you're definitely at the mercy of the people at the top. And unfortunately, the people at the top are, you know, mostly white men still in Hollywood.
Yeah, thank you so much for kind of shedding some light on this, because I just found this to be such a fascinating story. Where can people that see this, where can they go to find some of your writing online?
Yeah, so this piece on Milicent was originally published in OZY.com. And my website's ChristinaGaddy.com. I don't always write about monster movies, but I do write about film sometime, and I write about culture mostly and history. Yeah.
So definitely check it out, because after I read the article, I checked out a lot of her stuff, and it's all fantastic. So
Thank you.
yeah, of course. But yeah, once again, thank you so much for coming on and nerding out with me here on some history of a creature from the Black Lagoon. And yeah, you have yourself a great day.
Yeah, thank you so much, John.